Alaska has a way of humbling a man. Out here, the snow doesn't fall, it devours. Flakes swarm like ash from a collapsing world, swallowing roads, fences, even whole towns when they've been forgotten long enough. I signed on to clear those roads with my snowplow, carving paths through ice-packed highways that stretch across darkness like veins. The pay wasn't much, but out here, money doesn't matter. What matters is whether the lights on your plow stay burning, and if you can stay alive long enough to drag steel and salt through another night.
The department makes it sound simple. Keep the highways clear enough for supply trucks, ambulances, and the rare convoy that braves these winters. Safety first, they say, like that means anything out here where there's nothing but ice and open sky. I was 26 when I first sat in the seat of my assigned plow, an ancient yellow rig with rust on its teeth and a radio that whined like a dying animal between stations. They handed me my reflective jacket, my salted coffee in a styrofoam cup, and a single sheet of paper with rules that looked like they'd been copied generations ago. At first I thought it was a joke. Never stop for stalled or stranded vehicles. If headlights appear behind you and don't pass within 1 mile, increase speed. Under no circumstances, plow the old mining road. If you encounter more than one set of identical taillights, call dispatch immediately. If the snow moves against the wind, keep driving. Do not look. Do not leave the cab after midnight, even if you hear knocking. Half of it's just local superstition, my supervisor muttered while signing paperwork, but he never looked me in the eye. That told me more than the ink on the page did.
The pay wasn't high, but out here, work isn't about money. It's about not freezing, keeping food moving from warehouses to outposts, and pretending you've got purpose while the wilderness creeps in. The plow became my lifeline, its heater growling against the void. The blade biting through snow felt like proof that humans still had control, though the roads always seemed to heal overnight, burying every trace of my effort under fresh white weight. I kept the rules taped to the dash. It wasn't hard to follow them at first. There's no shortage of strange folktales in Alaska, and every indigenous guide, every trucker, every bush pilot has their own warnings. Don't whistle at northern lights. Don't name something if you don't know it answers. Don't take gifts from the dead. The rules felt like echoes of the same old fear dressed up as policy. The first time I saw a stranded sedan half buried at mile marker 38, I slowed instinctively. The dome light glowed faint amber, and a woman slumped in the driver's seat. Too still, too pale. She never raised her head as I passed. When I made it back to the depot, I forced myself to ask the mechanic. All he said was, "No one's driven that stretch in months." That night, I highlighted Rule 1. Another driver named Collins used to tail me on shifts. He'd tap the bike and hum old country songs when the silence got too heavy. One storm, he went quiet and never turned back up at the yard. I asked dispatch what happened. The reply buzzed with static. He broke Rule 2. Nothing more. I understood then. These weren't suggestions. They were survival instructions written by men who sat where I was sitting and wanted some poor fool down the line to live longer than they had. Each numbered line was a mile marker on the descent out of human territory. Because the truth is, the miles don't belong to us beyond a certain point. They're leased from something unseen. Something that's let us draw lines across its body for just long enough to fool ourselves into thinking we own them. But the ice is patient, and whatever walks beneath it is patient too.
Most nights on the plow offered nothing more than snow and silence. But the silence in Alaska is different. It's alive. It has texture, like wool stuffed in your ears. After a while, I realized the silence wasn't absence of sound, but presence. A presence that was patient, waiting for me to acknowledge it. The first sign showed up late in December. A Subaru sat idling on a remote stretch of highway, headlights drowning in falling white. I slowed, instincts pulling, but my hand hovered over the taped list on my dash. Rule 1. Never stop. I kept rolling. The odd part wasn't the car, it was the windshield. Even though the storm spat ice hard enough to sting, nothing stuck. The flakes seemed to vaporize on impact, the driver's face pressed against the glass. A blur. Dark eyes following me past. When I checked the mirrors, the Subaru was gone. No taillights. No tire tracks. Just virgin snow. Weeks later came the prints. Fresh snow blanketed the old highway every morning, but some shapes never filled in. Long stretches of road, gouged by something with stride too measured, too heavy, like a giant dragging claws just beneath the surface, breaking through for reminder scratches. I'd roll by with the plow blade down, and the grooves would pulse faintly, as if the snow itself shifted around them. Another night, as the plow's blade threw powder high against the berm, I caught movement. A shadow, too tall and narrow to be a man, loped low along the tree line parallel to me. Each time my floodlight swung wide on a curve, I saw limbs, too many joints, bending forward then backward in rhythm with its run. It never entered the road, only mirrored me from afar. Eventually the storm thickened, and it vanished into opaque white.
The radios were no comfort. Static lived in them like trapped insects, chittering at odd intervals. Sometimes the transmissions hissed with fragmented words beneath, names, questions. Collins? I thought I heard one night, though Collins had been gone nearly 2 months by then. Most disturbing was the night the snow itself seemed wrong. Wind pushed east that evening, strong enough to veer the plow. Yet as I stared down the road's length, I saw occasional flurries bending the other way, against the gale, like invisible footsteps kicking snow up as they moved. Rule 5 burned in my eyes. If the snow moves against the wind, don't look, just keep driving. I pressed the accelerator harder, but even through frosted glass, I could sense something pacing us. Not beside the plow, not behind, beneath. At the depot, I asked an older driver, Rick, about the snow. He chewed on his cigarette filter a long while before answering. Means the ground ain't solid right there. Means something's under it. He spat brown phlegm on the floor and turned away. Every warning seemed to circle back to the same truth. The roads didn't just pass through wilderness. They were borders. And some borders shouldn't be crossed after midnight. I felt it clearest at mile marker 62, where the asphalt buckled slightly. The lines of faded yellow paint rippled upward like something had pressed from below. Every time the plow hit that spot, I'd hear knocking beneath the cab. Slow, steady, until I left the marker behind. Knocks don't travel through solid asphalt, not unless the asphalt's hollow. By the end of January, I stopped telling myself these were just tricks of fatigue. Rules were rules for a reason, and I was starting to believe there might come a night when following them would be the only thing keeping me alive.
Isolation does strange things to the mind, especially in Alaska. Days bleed together under a sky that rarely sees sun, and the dark stretches so wide that you begin to forget what color looks like. Out on the plow with nothing but white and black swallowing the horizon, I sometimes wondered if I had slipped out of time entirely. The heater rattling, the endless grind of the blade pushing snow aside, and the radio's hollow static, it was all that tethered me to reality. There were nights where the storm swallowed the earth so completely that even the high beams of the plow only lit up a swirling dome 5 feet ahead, like I was driving inside a globe of moving glass dust. The horizon disappeared. The trees disappeared. It was just me, the machine, and the howl of the wind pressing claws against the cab. That's when you realize how fragile the idea of human territory really is. The roads, even paved and lined, felt skeletal, bare threads pulled across a body we had no business stitching our way through. You could sense weight under them, not weight from soil and rock, but something breathing, patient, keeping time with the beat of the tires.
I'd turn the radio louder to drown out the knocking beneath me, but every burst of static carried whispers that rose and fell with my heartbeat. One night at 2 a.m., I switched through the channels, desperate for company, and caught something impossible. Not a broadcast, not chatter, singing. Low guttural tones like a choir recorded underwater. It sang in a language I didn't know and didn't want to. I twisted the dial hard, but every channel became the same chorus. When I finally killed the radio, I could still hear it outside, carried on the storm until my ears rang.
The depot was no comfort either. The older drivers learned not to ask questions. Everyone carried the same gray look. Faces pale, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked from dry heat inside and ice outside. The break room stank of coffee burned down to tar in the pot, and cigarettes that never quite masked the mold creeping from the walls. Men played cards in silence, never mentioning the echoes on radios or the figures glimpsed in headlights. But silence is its own confession. Sometimes the roads themselves shifted. I'd be plowing Route B through the canyon and swear the mile markers were wrong. A distance that usually took 20 minutes could stretch to an hour, the markers repeating as if I'd driven a loop. Other times, the plow would jolt as though hitting something solid under the snow. Yet when I checked the mirrors, the blade rode clear asphalt. More than once, I felt the cab tilt slightly, even when the road was flat, as if something beneath pressed upward, heaving us toward the sky before sinking back down. One night, I stopped the plow at the overlook, breaking my own promise to never halt outside a depot. I turned off the engine and listened. At first, there was nothing but the hiss of snow. But soon, from deep below, a thrum started. Not heartbeat, not mechanical hum. Layers of sound welled up like a song played through the earth itself. The overlook vibrated until I thought my bones might crack. I turned the key, shoved the plow into gear, and promised myself I'd never cut the engine again. Isolation becomes terror when you realize you're never truly alone. Out here, something waits beneath the miles. Something that welcomes storms, because storms keep witnesses away. And I had the night shift.
It was late January when I crossed a stretch of highway known as Dead Elk Pass, a narrow strip banked by rock walls on one side and a frozen river on the other. Storms had been bad all week, the kind that reduced visibility to a wet sheet of static. But this night was different. The wind dropped suddenly, and the world seemed to hush. Nothing but crunching snow beneath my treads, steady at 15 miles an hour. At first I thought I was seeing reflections. Up ahead, duplicate headlights bloomed on the snow, bright and steady, pacing my own beams. I turned my high beams on. No car, no plow, just white flurries. Yet the light stayed, hovering with perfect symmetry, twin orbs burning holes in the storm, as if they had always been there. The radio crackled. Amidst the static, I could swear it repeated the same word. Don't. I pressed forward. Then I saw them. Shapes on the road. People, I thought, but wrong. Too tall, gangly, walking in lockstep, their heads dipped forward in rhythm, arms swaying in unison like marionettes tugged by a single string. Snow swirled around their legs, yet never touched them, as if the storm itself bent politely out of their way. Rule 1 screamed in my head, never stop for stranded vehicles. Rule 2, if headlights appear behind you and don't pass within 1 mile, increase speed. This wasn't behind me, but it felt worse. My stomach twisted, instincts demanding I stop, while the rules warned me to do the exact opposite. So I pressed down on the accelerator. The blades growled, spraying ice into white curtains.
That was when one of the figures pivoted. Not turned, not stumbled, pivoted, snapping its head and torso toward me like a compass needle snapping north. Its face, bleached pale, bore no features but the faint outline of a mouth that spread wider as I approached. Too wide, a smile etched into emptiness. I tightened my grip on the wheel, muscles quaking. The plow shuddered as if it had hit something. My headlights caught the gleam of a hand pressed flat to the blade, fingers stretched thin, bending backward, nails like shards of ice. No weight should have held at 40 miles per hour, not against steel-biting asphalt, but it clung effortlessly as if the plow moved over its body instead of through air. I wanted to slam the brakes. Instead, I heard Rick's voice in the back of my memory. "They own the roads now. Just keep driving." I gunned it, gears whining until the cab rattled. Snow sparked across the windshield like static. The figure's arm flexed, joints popping backward, but it never lost its grip on the blade. Then, with a sickening crack, like tree frost splitting bark, the arm sheared off. The body vanished into the storm instantly, leaving only the smell of brine and something sharp, metallic, like blood frozen on rebar. The plow bucked as though it had rolled over something soft. When the rear wheels righted, all that remained was the arm on the blade, thin, pale, fingers clenching open and shut, even without a body. I yanked to the wheel, panic shoving me toward the shoulder, but the rules grounded me. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I forced the plow back in line, heart ramming ribs until it hurt. When I finally reached the yard, the blade was bare. No arm, no trace, only deep scratches in the metal like teeth dragged across steel. The dispatcher logged me in like any normal night, eyes never lifting from his clipboard. But when he handed back my sheet, he said only one thing, voice low and flat. "Now you understand why the roads ain't ours."
The radio didn't always work, but when it did, I'd have preferred silence. Static is lonely, but predictable. Voices that cut through it never made me feel better. They always seemed a little too sharp, like the speaker wasn't just talking to me, but also listening through me. That night, after the thing's arm clung to my blade, dispatch broke in, a thin, nasal voice, flat with routine. "Unit 7, response check." "7 active," I replied, though my own voice shook more than I wanted to admit. Static swallowed the line for a stretch, then came back quieter. "You kept moving?" I blinked. "Yeah, why?" Long pause. Then, "Good. Remember the rules." Click. Line dead. It wasn't protocol. Dispatch usually logged weather, road markers, fuel, not vague riddles. But after that encounter, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever sat in the tower with their headset had seen more than they'd ever report on paper. 2 nights later, storm building, I caught someone else breaking in, not dispatch, a male voice, ragged with breath. "Anyone on mile 112? Jesus, don't swerve, just keep straight, don't..." Then stack, sharp as ripping cloth. "Collins?" I hissed into the mic, though I knew better. Collins had been marked absent months ago. Another driver claimed he'd swerved to avoid a bus of kids that weren't kids at all, lights flickering wrong in their windows. End of transmission. His rig was found nose first in the riverbank the next day, cab empty. But the voice sounded like him. Same drawl, same catch in the breath. I didn't sleep when I got back.
The old hands at the yard avoided the subject, but one, Rick again, finally met me for coffee. "They'll get in your head," he muttered, cigarette ash shaking down his shirt. "That radio's not just picking up chatter. The storm's a conduit, brings them closer." "Them?" "You saw them." His eyes flicked out the grimy window at the storm howling beyond the yard lights. "They slip between miles. They wear headlights, taillights too, sometimes old voices. If you answer, hell." He didn't finish, just stubbed his smoke, fingers trembling. That week, another driver disappeared. The board listed him as Daniel H., Unit 9. His plow never returned, but one morning the radio sparked his unit number on repeat. 9 clear, 9 clear. Over and over, perfectly monotone, for hours. They finally muted the channel, but every time someone tuned it back in, still chanting. A voice that wasn't his. The next shift, my dispatcher lingered on sign-in, clipboard trembling just slightly. Then he leaned closer, voice flat. Don't ever chase lights. Don't ever pull over. And if the radio tells you to stop, ignore it. For once, it wasn't a list typed on stained paper he gave me. It wasn't superstition. It was a confession, rising like steam from a man cooked too long in silence. As I drove out past the yard that night, floodlights haloed in blown snow, the radio hissed alive again. A woman's voice this time. Soft, melodic. 7, you can rest. Just pull over, sweetheart. The radio wasn't supposed to reach that far into me, into the part of me that wanted to stop, to close my eyes, to just end the night pretending miles weren't endless, that the world wasn't hollow beneath my wheels. I gripped the wheel, teeth clenched, and drove into the white. Because the rules, voice or no voice, only had one promise. Stopping meant you belonged to the road.
Rick never said much, but after the night of those voices, he finally cracked. Maybe it was too many years stacked on his shoulders, or maybe he just wanted someone else to carry a piece of it. Either way, it came out slow over a thermos of black coffee at 2 a.m. while we waited for the plows to thaw. You ever wonder why that stretch of highway follows the mining road? He asked, eyes buried in steam. I shrugged. Easier grade, I suppose? Followed what was cut first. His lips curled. Not a smile, not a sneer, just a pained twitch. No, they paved over it to bury it. He leaned back, staring at the stained break room ceiling tiles like he could still see events clawing through them. 1800s, gold rush brought men up into the teeth of nowhere. They didn't care storms lasted 9 months. Didn't care frost burned flesh faster than fire. They dug, tunnels spiraling down. Equipment rusted, men froze stiff against the walls. Some made it out, but they didn't come out right. I swallowed, throat dry. What happened? He worked with one of the descendants, old man named Callahan. Said his great-grandfather came back with eyes all fogged, pupils blown wide so they shone. Man claimed they'd opened into something hollow. Said the earth wasn't just dirt and rock, it was ribs. Something sleeping tucked under miles. His tongue never got straight again after that. Just muttered words and rhythms nobody could copy. The wind screamed outside the depot, rattling the thin walls. Rick kept going. They say whole crews dropped tools one night, standing as one, then walked into the tunnels. Didn't come out. Next morning, tracks covered in snow. Weeks later, some miners tried to follow. Found the tunnels collapsed in spirals, like the ground itself had swallowed their own. And the echoes down there. He sucked air between his teeth. Said you could hear wagons creaking, boots scraping. Not ghosts, not memories. Like the tunnels themselves lived, mimicked, learned.
The older man's hand shook enough to spill coffee, and when they shut down the mines officially, figured it would be over. But those tunnels, they're still beneath the roads. They paved right over them, hoping asphalt made a seal, but nothing holds forever. Ice shifts, ground breathes, roads buckle, and they inherit what's waiting underneath. I press my hand to the edge of the table, nails digging. You're saying... Rick cut me off. I'm saying when you hear footsteps on the roof of your cab miles from anywhere, it ain't snow. I'm saying the lights in your rear view don't belong to a Chevy. I'm saying whatever the miners woke up, it doesn't forgive intrusions. It uses the roads now, like veins. He finally met my eyes, pupils pinpricks against his tired gray irises. When you plow, you're not keeping them clear for folks, son. You're keeping them clear for what still walks. Because it needs highways to move, and the department knows it. Hell, maybe they've been paying us half our lives just to keep them fed. The radio in the corner popped with static, making my skin crawl. Neither of us spoke after that. But every time I pressed the blade down and the asphalt groaned beneath me like something breathing back, I remembered Rick's words. The roads weren't paved over wilderness. They were laid across something alive, something that tolerated us just long enough to build it a network. And one day, it might not need us at all.
For weeks, I'd followed the rules to the letter. Tape on the dash, Highlighted lines, white-knuckled steering whenever a shadow tempted me to look twice. But sooner or later, the roads test you. They don't ask politely, they set traps to force your hand. It was near mile 84, where the highway twists between high drifts that looked like frozen waves mid-crash. Snow flared against my windshield, wipers stumbling against ice. When I spotted them, 2 figures in the road, hunched, bent against the wind, waving their arms. At first glance, they look human. Heavy coats dusted in snow, silhouettes trying desperately to flag me down. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like someone mimicking desperation without understanding it. I crushed the accelerator because I knew better. Rule 1, never stop. But then one of them screamed, or at least it sounded like it. My radio hissed and spat, and into my ears bled a sound too exact to ignore. Help! Please God, help us! The voice wasn't distant. It was my brother's. My brother who died 5 years ago in a wreck. I hit the brakes. The plow fought me, metal squealing over snow-slicked asphalt, until I skidded to a crawl just 20 feet from those shapes. My floodlights pinned them, and that was when the lie cracked open. Their coats weren't coats at all, but stretched skin, laced and uneven around the shoulders. Faces pale, mouths wide open, yet their lips never moved. The cries still poured out, but the mouths hung frozen in grotesque O's, playback stuck on repeat. I wanted to reverse, to hit the gas again, but my foot felt cemented to the floorboard.
The taller one tilted its head back, and its jaw began to split. Not open like a person's, but from ear to ear, tearing the skin like a seam unzipped. The sound of fabric ripping filled the blizzard. Beside it, the other raised its arm jerkily and pointed, not at me, but toward the blade of the plow. My headlights dimmed, flickered, and for one long heartbeat I saw my reflection in its glossy, lidless eyes. Not just my face, my exact movements mirrored back, head tilted, lips parted in terror. The radio burst to life again. Pull over. Let them in. The dispatcher's voice. Too smooth. Too wrong? Every instinct screamed, but my muscles dragged against me. Then, knocking from outside the cab, directly against my door. A slow, polite rap, rap, rap. Like a neighbor come to borrow sugar in the middle of hell. That broke the trance. Hands trembling, I slammed the shifter forward. The plow roared, wheels spitting slush. The shapes lunged toward me, movement spider-quick and boneless. One slapped against the driver's window and I saw its chest split down the center, jagged ribs opening like they were trying to invite me inside. I didn't look again. Kept the pedal floorboarded until the speedometer quivered past safety and the blades scattered their screams into the storm. The cab smelled of iron, metallic and thick, though nothing dripped, nothing bled. My heart rammed hard enough I thought it would break my ribs. When I reached the depot an hour later, Rick watched me stumble out, pale as milk. "You stopped?" he said flatly. Not a question. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The rules were simple, and I'd broken them. And the worst part? The face I saw staring back from those inhuman eyes looked far too eager to take my place. The next time, I forgot.
The plow isn't meant for speed, but desperation is a hell of a mechanic. The cab rattled, bolts whining, as I forced the old rig faster than I ever had before. Snow sliced across the windshield like static, white noise swallowing the world. I didn't dare check the mirrors. But some things don't need mirrors. At first I only felt them, long, scraping thumps beneath me, like hands smacking asphalt on either side of the tires. Then came the shadows, keeping perfect pace in the edge of my lamps, their outlines warped by falling snow. They didn't run like people. They bent wrong, shoulders folding forward, arms swinging long as pendulums dragging claws across the road.
Every instinct told me to look straight ahead, but curiosity is a poison you can't shake. Against my better judgment, I flicked my eyes to the mirror. They were there. Dozens. Running in silence, blank faces peeling into imitation grins. Their legs rippled too long, like bones stretching mid-stride. And worse, among them, I saw myself. My own shape sprinting fluidly alongside their horde. Eyes sunk black, teeth grinding through frozen air. I forced my head back forward, gripped the wheel until my fingers ached. The plow groaned up an incline, tires biting icy pavement. Behind me, claws scraped steel. The tailgate screeched, the sound of nails dragging slow to relish fear.
The radio hissed alive, distorted voices overlapping. Stop, stop, stop. A sound like my brother's laugh underneath, sharp and cruel. Another voice, calm and familiar. My dispatcher. 7, they only want a ride. Stop the plow. I shut my eyes for half a breath, praying the rules still meant something. Floor it. Don't listen. Survive. The incline leveled out, opening into a bend. I pulled the wheel hard. Snow blasted off the blade like shrapnel. For a second, the jackknifed rear nearly tore me into the ditch. But as the plow steadied, I heard a chorus of shrieks behind. The sound of things skidding too hard, too fast. When I risked a glance, I saw them slide unnaturally across the pavement, bodies folding, limbs contorting against momentum. Yet, they didn't fall. They clung to the road itself, bone limbs stabbing through ice to drag them back upright. The sight nearly broke me. Then headlights appeared ahead, faint and gleaming, steady as a beacon. For the first time in my life out here, I prayed for another truck, another set of human eyes, but the light swelled too fast, far too fast. Parallel, red taillights appeared beside them, then more. A caravan of duplicate pairs multiplying across the storm. Dozens, no, hundreds. Every line of traffic rushed forward in seamless rhythm, painting the storm with false roads that stretched into impossible geometry. My stomach flipped as I realized it. They weren't cars. They were them, wearing light like skin, stretching roads out into infinity. I barreled forward, blade throwing sparks as it caught stone beneath thinning snow. My plow roared like a dying animal. I plowed straight through the illusion, straight into white oblivion, heart hammering, rules pounding through my skull. When I looked in the mirror, I saw nothing behind me, nothing chasing, nothing falling, nothing alive on that road, but my own taillights. Still, I didn't slow. Couldn't. The rules had proven right again. Speed was survival, and though I'd shaken them for now, I had crossed a line. I'd broken rules you can't unbreak. And once you see your own reflection running with them, eventually, it wants you back.
The storm spat me out into silence. One moment the plow shuddered beneath claws I couldn't see, headlights devoured in static, and the next, I broke through. Pale moonlight spilled over a curve, and the snow lessened to a steady whisper. What lay ahead wasn't on my maps. The road wound into a village, at least it used to be. Log cabins half consumed by drifts leaned in crooked lines beside the highway, shingles loose and hanging like crooked teeth. Old signs jutted from snowbanks, general store, post office, chapel. Words faded, letters missing. No smoke, no footprints, no tire tracks. And yet, lights burned. Not the warm glow of lanterns or the hum of modern bulbs. These glowed cold, a strange blue, seeping from windows like underwater fire. They pulsed, syncing faintly with my heartbeat, and for a second, I thought the cabins themselves were breathing. I eased the plow down, blades scraping asphalt, radios hissing faintly with overlapping whispers. The village pressed in on both sides, crooked streets vanishing under mounds of ice. I knew the highways out here, no village
ever sat in this valley, yet the paint lines carried me straight through its spine. Signs of habitation only made it worse. Coats hung on nails inside houses, cups vey on tables filled halfway with liquid frozen solid decades ago. A rocking chair still creaked on one porch, groaning slow like it never stopped rocking, even without wind to push it. Then came the carvings.
The chapel door was sealed with gouges, deep, as if clawed from the inside. Strange symbols ran along the wood, spirals intersecting with circles, etched over and over again until grooves layered one another like desperate graffiti. In the blue glow, they seemed to squirm. I fought the urge to stop, but curiosity dragged my eyes toward the side streets. That's when I saw them. Figures, not moving, not alive, but arranged. Dozens of mannequins, carved from ice itself, planted in the snowbanks along the roofs and alleys. Each wore faces stretched too thin, features blurred except for the eyes, gouged out holes that leaked faint trails of frost. Something whispered through my radio, home. I clutched the throttle, forced the plow back into motion. Passing the chapel, one of the frozen figures leaned, only slightly, but enough that snow cracked free of its elbow like dead skin. Its head tilted to follow me, empty sockets drinking in my lights. I wanted to bolt. I wanted to abandon the machine, sprint into the trees, but logic chained me. Survival meant forward. Always forward. The road unspooled, lined by that impossible village, until the last cabins dipped back beneath frozen dunes. The lights pulsed brighter as I exited, flashing in unison with a rhythm not human, as if bidding farewell. When the last glow vanished behind hills, I realized my chest hurt. I'd forgotten to breathe. For miles after, I wondered, not if people had lived there, but if people had ever left. Maybe they'd joined the roads just like the miners. Maybe the blue lights weren't lamps or fire. Maybe they were the last flicker of human souls siphoned into something ancient. And now, that part of the highway was just another vein, a tributary, a reminder I wasn't plowing for humanity. I hadn't been for a long time.
The storm closed back in after the village, thicker than before, like whatever lived under those glowing cabins had exhaled and sent me into its breath. Snow clawed sideways, stinging pellets hammering the cab. I leaned low over the wheel, blade grinding on rising drifts, when shadows loomed ahead. At first I thought it was rockfall, another blockage left by snowfall. Then the outlines resolved. Machines. Rigs like mine, parked at unnatural angles, half buried in white crust. Snowplows. 3 of them. I slowed, heart hammering, because the rules said keep moving, but how can you drive past your own grave? The first plow lay nose down in a ditch, windshield frosted opaque. Its blade was warped, curled back on itself like something had pressed from the outside in. The second said dead center across the highway, hazard lights blinking steady, orange fire pulsing into endless dark. Inside the cab, silhouettes sat silently, motionless, helmet still strapped as if waiting for the shift to end. I edged closer to the third, still upright on the shoulder, a hand dangled out of its shattered cab window. Not fresh, not frozen, something in between, flesh pale and porous like pumice stone. The radio cracked alive. At first I thought it was mine, but the sound was distant, layered. I realized it was theirs. Each plow hummed with the same phrase, broken voices repeating in staggered sequence, over and over. Unit 9. Clear. Unit 11. Active. Unit 2. Clear. Dead drivers, long since gone. Identities recycled like a litany. Every transmission identical in tone, like whatever made them was only mimicking. I pressed the accelerator, blade throwing snow like seawater. But something resisted. The third plow's headlights flared bright, though no engine ran, no driver breathed. They blazed directly into my cab, pinning me in pure light. As the snow swirled golden orange, I saw movement in the periphery.
Figures clambering along the dead rigs, long-limbed things wearing the bodies still strapped into the cabs like suits. One shape lifted the driver's head by the jaw, opened its slack mouth, and the radio warbled out another transmission. 9. Clear. I gagged on bile, but held my foot steady on the gas. The wheel jerked hard, blade scraping a buried rig I hadn't seen beneath the snow. My cab careened, nearly spinning. For a moment, headlights showed me rows of pale faces inside every plow, pupils rolled white, mouths open, lips forming the same endless chant. Clear, clear, clear. It sounded less like status reports, more like permission. Grants stamped and signed by something I couldn't see. Permission for them to move freely. Permission for us to be removed. The storm roared again, and for a heartbeat I thought the dead rigs might stand lurching into the road, but as quickly as I'd stumbled into them, they vanished into white static. Only my own plow remained, engine chugging loud, metal groaning its protest. I didn't stop again for 30 miles. Didn't dare. My jaw ached from clenching and my chest burned from shallow breaths, but the truth had planted itself deep as the frost. Drivers before me had broken the rules, and they hadn't just died. They'd been absorbed, turned into lanterns to keep the path lit, warnings that weren't warnings at all. The convoys weren't abandoned. They were guardians, left like scarecrows, lit up to frighten or lure fools who thought the roads were still ours. And the voices, they weren't ghosts. They were rehearsals. Messages perfected by something clever enough to learn human words, even as it wore the roads like veins.
The miles after the convoy were worse than any encounter. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I understood. Highways aren't lifelines, they're arteries. And I wasn't plowing for trucks or for neighbors trying to reach a town. I was plowing because something under the snow wanted its routes unclogged. The thought squeezed my heart until each pump ached. The static radio confirmed it with whispers between frequencies. Keep them clear. Keep them open. Not human voices, but something using them like masks. Blending dispatchers, old drivers, my brother, all stitched together into instructions only desperate, obedient men would follow. By the time I reached the ridge near mile 128, my fuel gauge was dropping and frost crawled higher up the windshield. I pulled the heavy coat tighter, but a terrible clarity crawled under my skin. Every push of the blade, every cleared drift, road maintenance, yes, but not for humanity, for it, whatever vast thing pressed beneath the crust. The storm thinned enough to show me a valley below. Roads wove together like a web, like veins radiating from a black heart. Dozens of them, alive with false light, the taillights, headlights, illusions bending perspective. A system, a circulatory map. My hand hovered over the radio mic. Rules screamed at me. Never stop, never pull over. I thought of Rick's haunted face, his whispers about miners who walked into tunnels and never emerged. I thought of Colin's voice still echoing through dead equipment long after his blood froze.
And then I thought of what it meant to keep driving, night after night, mile after mile, feeding a body too vast to imagine, keeping it alive under our wheels, under our tax-funded service. The department knew. The whole government knew. Snowplow drivers weren't workers. We were caretakers of an artery system carved over something ancient. So I had a choice. Keep the engine roaring, clear the veins, or abandon the cab and freeze, starving the thing, even for one night. But what if leaving made me another signal, another corpse reciting clearance into the radio, welcoming the next fool in line? The wheel felt hot under my gloved hands. Breath clouded glass. I inhaled hard, tasted rust, oil, blood. I pressed the transmission button. Unit 7, refusing further clearance. Roads aren't ours. They never were.
I won't plow. For 10 agonizing seconds, silence. Then a laugh. My brother's laugh. Dispatch blending into his chuckle, twisting it hollow. That's not your choice. Lights flashed ahead, bending into shape. Dozens of figures lined across the highway in pale formation, their mouths opened in wide O's, and through them the radios of the dead convoy screamed, "Clear, clear, clear." The plow trembled as if reacting, engine coughing, fighting me, like even the machine no longer belonged to me but to the thing beneath. I shut my eyes, torn between rules and rebellion. To keep driving was to serve it. To stop was to surrender. Decisions out here weren't survival. They were submission in different uniforms. My teeth ground. My hand gripped tighter. Somewhere deep below the snow, something pulsed, waiting. Smile wide, I whispered into the mic, "Then watch me starve you." And I shoved my boot against the brake.
The screech of the brakes cut through the storm like a scream, rubber screaming against ice as the plow skidded sideways. For a heartbeat, I thought it would obey me. Then the machine groaned, a guttural, metallic sound like steel resisting orders. The wheel jerked hard in my grip. Something deeper than gears, deeper than hydraulics, seemed to fight back. The plow shuddered violently, blade biting asphalt, sparks carving fire into the white night. It didn't stop. It wouldn't. The engine revved on its own, growling angrily, dragging me forward even with my foot crushing the brake. Then the lights ahead split open.
Figures emerged. Not individuals, but a procession, tall as trees and spare as shadows, limbs bending like icicles too heavy to hold their weight. They stepped as one, perfect cadence, their faceless heads lifting to meet me. My lamps caught slick faces with mirror shine, my own reflection, dozens of me pasted on them like wet masks. The plow screamed metal agony, wheels spinning, heater blasting, the whole cab trembling as though the storm itself had crawled inside. Radio, "Clear, Unit 7, clear, clear." A chorus, overlapping, in voices of men I knew and men I'd only read in the logbooks. Collins, Rick, though I'd left him back at the depot, my dispatcher, even my brother. I ripped the mic free, hurled it to the floor. No. For the first time in my life here, I opened the cab door in the middle of a storm. Cold carved my skin to raw glass in seconds. But the air smelled wrong. Briny, metallic, sharp like breath inside a tomb. I stumbled down onto the asphalt, boots sinking into snow that seemed far too soft, like stepping onto breath instead of earth. The plow kept crawling forward without me, its light swiveling like angry eyes. The blade bit into the road, and blood hissed up in steaming rivulets, staining snow black.
The figures moved closer, slow, patient, not chasing now. They knew I was theirs. One bent double, lowering its mirror face to level with me. It smiled my own ragged smile, lips parting too wide. Its reflection mirror showed not just me, but me inside the plow's cab, still driving. It showed futures, me plowing roads until my body rotted, voice forever repeating into radios. "No!" I screamed again, my voice torn raw by cold and terror. The figure's claws reached for my chest, scraping lightly down my jacket as if testing ownership. Behind it, the others shuffled, a whole line of reflections repeating the same move. Claws extended, slashing downward in unison, a gesture rehearsed over centuries. I staggered back, heel catching snow, eyes darting toward the machine I'd spent years inside. Its headlights dimmed, flared, then dimmed again, like blinking, like a beast.
The pulse pulsed. Literally, asphalt rose and fell in waves, heartbeat thudding under my boots. My balance broke. My knees met ice, and the pulse pressed upward harder, something beneath straining to breach.
The beings encircled, their faces flickering like broken glass catching headlights from every direction. My own face multiplied 100-fold, grinning, calling silently to take my place. For a second, I almost wanted to. Then one broke ranks, jaws spreading too wide, echoes cracking through storm. Join! I staggered to my feet and did the only thing left. I turned back toward the cab, toward the thing that had betrayed me 1 mile at a time, but was still mine, still metal, still a machine born of people. I roared into the night, shoved back into the cab, slammed the door, and gunned the throttle one last desperate time. The blade chewed asphalt like bone. The reflection men shrieked, screams sharp enough to curdle glass, folding backward as sparks and fire sprayed into the snowstorm. But it wasn't victory. Not yet. The road itself was breaking open underneath me.
The plow wailed like a dying thing as asphalt buckled and split beneath us. Steam and snow mingled, rising in curtains that stank of salt and iron. The wheel fought in my hands, jerking harder as if I wasn't guiding it anymore, but only clinging while something deeper steered. Then the radio came alive, not in static, not in voices, but in a low, steady heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub-dub. Perfect sync with the rise and fall of the road. I jammed the shifter, forced the plow into reverse. Tires screamed, treads shredded by the ice, and for a heartbeat, it seemed willing to obey. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could claw out of this artery before it sealed. But headlights flared in the storm ahead. Dozens. Hundreds. Impossible lanes of false vehicles stretching across the snow. Each set of lights meant a face, and each face carried my own reflection. Some younger, some older, some broken with frozen blood trailing from their lips. All of them smiling, like they'd been waiting for me to finish my shift. I pressed the mic to my mouth. My fingers bled from cold, but I held steady. Unit 7, I rasped, voice nearly swallowed by static. Transmission final. The roads aren't ours. They never were. It's veins, and we've been keeping it alive. Stop sending us. For God's sake, stop.
For just a moment, silence answered. Then a laugh. A laugh that was mine, layered and multiplied, echoing through the speakers in overlapping waves. Hundreds of me laughing in unison until tears stung my frostbitten eyes. The plow lurched again. Through the cracked windshield, the road rippled like flesh, seams opening to reveal hollowed blackness underneath. Something vast stirred under there. Its size was unimaginable, not a creature you glanced at, but a continent unfurling muscle under the disguise of earth. I slammed my fist against the dash one more time, forcing the engine to roar. Flames spat from the exhaust. The blade screeched along the ruptured blacktop, and for one instant, I thought maybe fire and steel could wound it. Maybe mankind had one final bite to land. Then the cab tilted forward, nose first, dragging me down. Everything ahead was open throat. Everything behind was closing funnel. The headlights of the lane ghosts bent downward, vanishing one by one into chasms leading into its body. And then I saw them. Other plows, the convoy from before, reappearing along the collapsed road, their cabs filled with pale drivers who turned to greet me. Their mouths moved in mechanical sync as the radio whispered, "Clear, clear, clear." That was the last transmission.
As I write this now, crammed into the back of the depot, half-frozen hands trembling over paper, I know I won't last long. The storm outside doesn't want me anymore. The road doesn't want me either. But it will soon. Because the thing under Alaska never stops hungering. It needs its roads kept open. It needs caretakers. And the department has already called in the next shift. If you're reading this, if you've taken the keys and think the plow is just a machine, the night just a storm, listen to me. When the lights appear in the mirror, keep driving. When the radio tells you to pull over, keep driving. And if you ever hear knocking beneath the cab, remember this above all else. The roads are not for you, and they never were.